Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you so much, ladies, for your time and your expertise. Thank you for pouring into our team. I feel like you've given us a lot to chew on, a lot to think on, and hopefully some ways to really support you and other teachers within our communities in this upcoming school year. We wish you all the best, a successful year, and thank you so much for being a part of so many children's development and being their favorite person. So thank you again for your time, and we wish you all the best tonight.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you for having us. And you
Yes.
guys are all so important in the development of the child. It's a partnership with the
Yeah,
teachers and the families. So thank
absolutely.
you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody, we are moving on. We have Miss Kassie with us tonight. Miss Kassie is one of literally my favorite people in the world. And she has been a person that has partnered with the agency and with our team for years. So if you've been with us for more than 5 or 6 years, you've seen and heard from Miss Kassie. If not, welcome to the treat that is her whole entire being tonight. Miss Kassie is the owner of Greenhouse Pediatric. I lost my train of thought. But Greenhouse. And she is an occupational therapist. She is a master of all things. She is a consultant. She is an educator. She's just a whirlwind of goodness wrapped into a human. And she is definitely helpful to us when we're dealing with our children who may be struggling with sensory processing disorders, ODD, and different types of things like that that may be becoming obstacles or may be seen as obstacles to their success. And so she's here to help give us some strategies on how we can best help our children navigate throughout this school year. Thank you so much, Ms. Kassie, for being here with us tonight.
It is nice to be here. I was just looking at that picture thinking, man, that is an old picture. We've known each other a long time.
Love it, love it. So can you tell the team, I've obviously told them that you're baby Jesus, but can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
I'm an occupational therapist. I've been an OT for 22 years, and I opened Greenhouse Pediatric Therapy 10 years ago. I've shifted away from the outpatient pediatric clinic, and I'm doing more one-on-one and consulting at the moment. And I love teaching and mentoring because I can see a caseload of kids and help, 20, 25 kids, or I can teach everybody else what I know and help hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids. So that's what I'm shifting towards. I am super passionate about early childhood development, social emotional development, autism, other types of neurodivergence. I teach classes on trauma and behavior and sensory stuff and play and whatever else. Probably I've done it. I've been doing this a long time. I've worked with all the types of people. So I'm comfortable from newborns, well, birth to death. I've done it all. So
I love that. So we've been talking with some educators about this transition into the school year for our children who may have some sensory needs. This can be a bigger transition for them as they come into school. And what we find a lot of times is as they're coming home, they're, having these big outbursts. It's because of like the onslaught of like just input that they've received throughout the day that oftentimes, especially now, given the conditions of school, many parents aren't able to go and eat lunch with their children. They're not able to go in there and see what's happening. What are some ways or strategies? Can you speak to that? And then what are some ways that we can kind of help mitigate that transition and help them kind of get better prepared for that?
yes, there's been a definite shift over the last few years, and schools for some reason have shifted towards the higher academic things and much more sit in your seat and listen. And like when I was a kid, because that was so long ago, we had PE every day. We had an outdoor recess every day. We had vocal music every day. We had art, like we had all of these things every single day. And then when we weren't in school, we were spending all of our time outside climbing trees and playing kickball. And like I have quite quite a lot of pretty significant sensory issues myself. And I don't remember them as a child because I was feeding my body all of the regulating activities all the time. And now kids have PE like what, twice a week, and they're in classrooms with 30 kids, and they're pushing academics at a younger and younger age, even though the development hasn't changed. Like kids truly are designed to decode and read around the age of 7, and we're looking at it for 4-year-olds,
Yeah.
which the academics has replaced the open play and the outdoor play and the risky play. Kids should stumble and fall and learn about risk assessment very, very young. And I don't know how Gen X, we were like, we left the house after breakfast and came back at dark. Like, you know, I used to climb the fence and go run around on the railroad tracks. We were just kind of out there on our own. And I don't know how all of our children, we've shifted like the completely opposite direction and are super, super protective of the kids. But I think that that has been a disservice to the generation that is teenagers, especially right now, because they haven't had that opportunity to go and explore and move and do, and screens take up a lot of space in our kids' brains, which amplify some of the challenges that were mitigated by, you know, playing outside.
So we find that a lot of our families for whom their children do have varying degrees of neurodivergent, they lean really heavily on screens as a regulating factor. Is this beneficial to our children? And if not, what should we be doing?
That's a hard question. Because for some kids, it's absolutely needed for a period of time. For some kids, though, it's not recovery, it's dissociation.
Ah.
And so when you're looking at screens, you need to look at what happens when they're gone. So if it's time for the screen to be done, is there this massive panicking, like withdrawal? Because if so, then the screen might be more of a let me dissociate from my life and I don't have to do anything, because it stimulates them and they don't have to deal with the hard things as much. Then you need to look at more strategies for helping support that, versus if you've been at school all day and you need an hour to veg out on the video game and then you're done with that, that's different. And so I think a lot of it depends on the kid. It depends on the age of the kid. Like in my house, I have 2 delightful teenagers right now. And consistently, when they are starting to bicker more and more and get more irritable, if we take down some of the screens, magically they're better.
Yeah.
And it's consistent. But I will say that if you have done everything to get through your school day, you're going to need some time to detox at home, and that's often with the screen. So
Are there any things that we can send with children to help them feel a little bit more regulated throughout the day? Are there any props or any things that we can send with them in their backpacks, or ways that we can dress them that would help them feel a little bit more grounded throughout the day?
yes, I've found that unfortunately there are a lot of teachers that don't allow that, or will hold it as a if you're good, then you can get this kind of a thing, instead of a you need this to be able to make it through your day kind of a thing. And so I would say before sending something to the school, there has to be a relationship with the teacher saying, hey, this is what this is for. Because the teachers often see it as a distraction because the other kids want it, which is true. So there has to be some sort of dialogue around that. The most helpful thing is to provide the input before school. So I have some kids, they go swim for like an hour before school every day, because that's how they get through their day. Or they go walk or run, or they jump on the trampoline, or there's some sort of that is called proprioception, that input to the joints and muscles that is generally calming. And then a lot of our kids don't eat at school because the food is weird. It's very noisy. There's so many smells. They have 15 minutes to get in line and get sit down and then eat their whole meal. And so having a snack in the car at pickup, I think, is vital.
Yeah.
Just a basket of things that are really easy, like a crunchy carb, that they can immediately get in them to help their blood sugars regulate. That is super important. And don't immediately dive into the questions. How was your day? All that. Let them like just sit there. If they like music, have music on in the car, their favorite songs. And a lot of the kids, to prevent that meltdown at home, the ride home can be crucial. So if the ride home is more of a sit, drink your water, eat a little snack, if you have music that you like, and then give them some space. And then usually after that, they can do some of the things. Yeah, I would say that's the biggest help is the snack, the water bottle. Sucking through a straw or something that has resistance is really regulating. So Camelbacks or a lot of the, sippy cups provide that. A lot of our kids have a hard time getting off of sippy cups because it provides that. But there are water bottles that will provide that same input. Or some kids have a smoothie after school that input from the effort, sucking that through the straw can be really regulating.
Thank you for that. When we're talking about children who maybe are not going to matriculate into the traditional classroom and maybe they're being homeschooled, or doing education in that capacity, or the nannies or other home educators are there maybe just tutoring them, what signs should we be looking for that shows that a child is either dysregulated or checked out from this or overstimulated, and versus like pressing through subject matter? What are the signs that show like, hey, maybe we need to give a time out so that the child can re-regulate, versus, and how, well, I guess my second part to that, and how do we do that without losing the ability to have persistence and perseverance and things like that?
Right. Again, that's tricky, and it depends on the kid, because you have some kids who you can get back into it, man, they can go through it. And then some kids, if they have a tiny break, you're done.
Yeah.
And so you guys will know your kids. You'll know these kids really, really well. Keep in mind that some kids just can't do it. They just cannot do it at that moment. And think about if you've had a kid who has been in school and has been pulled out of school because school was rough.
Yeah.
It may take them a whole semester to recover from that, and that's okay. It is more important for them to feel safe and regulated and connected with a human than for them to do those math problems, because when you feel safe and regulated and connected with the human, the math isn't that hard.
Yeah.
And it's regulation has to come before everything else. So if you are really pushing on something that is terribly tricky, find more ways to be connected, find more ways to move the body. A lot of kids can do some of these things if they're bouncing on a ball, or if they're pacing around the room, or if they're dictating to you instead of having to write, because a lot of our kids, their bodies aren't cooperative. They have this stuff in their head. It cannot get out through their mouths or through their hands. So find a way. Some kids it's typing, some kids it's dictating, some kids it's drawing, and they can draw the most beautiful, elaborate stories, but cannot write the words. And so just be open to other ways of helping the things that are easier for them have a bigger part in their day, and not focusing on just the really, really hard things. And know that the biggest predictor of success as an adult is social emotional skills, not math or social studies or reading or whatever. Those things are important, but if you have a child with dyslexia or has, significant learning differences, and they do not learn to read, but they can have relationships with people, they can have a job.
Yeah.
They can have friends. If you have somebody who is highly academic but cannot be with people, they struggle as adults consistently more than the people who can connect. So focus on that connection more so than the obedience of sitting in the chair.
I find that to be so insightful. What are some strategies, or if any, that you found to be effective in helping children who may have been diagnosed with ADHD? How can we help them with that, or how can we help them with their executive function, or can we?
Yes. Okay. So this is funny because I'm really pretty good at my job and I'm pretty insightful with kids. I figured out that I have ADHD 3 years ago. And then my whole life made sense. I was like, are you kidding me? My child has very obvious ADHD, and I'm nothing like that type of ADHD. And I saw, the memes on social media during the pandemic, and I was like, haha, that's funny. I do that. Wait. And so I started going down the rabbit hole, and I was like, I do all of those things. And so I started researching what it looks like. I will say it can look different in different people, but it looks very different in boys and girls. Often your girls are perfect at school and get home and fall apart. They often work so hard to cover up any potential, I don't know, failures, that they're perfect. But some telltale signs that you can look for, they have to wait till the last minute to get it done. They cannot get it done without that pressure. I used to do my calculus homework on the floor outside the classroom before class. AP calculus in high school, I would do it the 10 minutes before class. Leaving a task and coming back, getting distracted by something, hyper focusing on one thing and forgetting about, eating, going to the bathroom. If you have a kid who doesn't have to go to the bathroom, doesn't have to go to the bathroom, doesn't have to go to the bathroom, and is about to pee their pants all of a sudden, that might be something that you can look into. Executive functioning, for us, it's never going to be as good as people without ADHD or other neurodivergence. It's just not. I could practice all the things. You know how many planners I've bought in my life. I'm not able to do it, even with all of the planners. I keep thinking every year, like, this is the one that's going to make me be able to do these things. It's not. But you can help with, hey, set an alarm on your phone. Here's a visual timer. Here's the visual schedule. Having a buddy to work alongside is the most amazing thing. It's called body doubling. And I will sit here and my brain will be screaming at me to get up and go do something, and I cannot make my body do it. But if somebody is alongside me, my friend or my mom or my kids, my husband, whatever, if they're just sitting there with me, they don't even have to do anything. If they're just sitting there with me, I can get up and do all the things. It's the weirdest phenomenon. So sometimes they do need you to be right next to them for them to finish these simple things. Again, movement is super important. Oral input is very, very important. I have been chewing gum since forever, and I didn't realize why I was chewing gum, but it helps me focus. Caffeine. I remember in college, I would drink like 2 or 3 Mountain Dews and take like the best nap, because the caffeine would pull my brain down enough to be able to do it. And people think, don't do caffeine because it'll make you crazy, but it actually does the opposite in my brain and my child. Like, we both do much better when we've had some caffeine. I know this is kind of a tangent, but a lot of parents are super resistant to medication. And studies are pretty consistent. If you can find the right medication, it decreases the risk of risky behavior by like 80% or something. Like, it's crazy. Drugs, alcohol, promiscuity, like those things, because we're seeking some dopamine, really. But that can be something worthwhile. I wonder what my life would have been like had I known about this as a child. And with females specifically, when it's not identified, it turns into, and this is true for, autism and other types of neurodivergence and mental illness, it turns into eating disorders, cutting, running away, really terrible mental health, higher risk of suicide, those types of things. When you have the twice exceptional kids, the kids who are gifted and have some other something going along with that. So if you see some of those types of patterns, that would be worth looking into.
Yeah. In what ways do you feel like occupational therapy can support school readiness and academic success?
Well, there's a lot of different things that OT does, and there are a lot of different therapists that focus on different things. Like, there are therapists in town who focus on primitive reflexes to help, the brain and the body kind of talk to each other. There are therapists that focus on sensory processing or fine motor. I tend to focus on the social emotional component because it's my favorite. And honestly, sitting at a table working on cutting on a straight line makes me just not want to do it. So I tend to do the play.
Mhm.
OT can work on just about anything. And that's what's cool about OT, is because it is all encompassing of so many things when you find somebody who is passionate about that particular thing, and lean into it. There are OTs who specialize in driving or burns or hands or whatever. The purpose of OT is to find what is meaningful for that child or family and help the hard things not be as hard.
Mhm.
Like, so you think about that includes everything. And so I've worked with, 6-week-olds on feeding and 1-year-olds on taking steps and 18-year-olds on how to apply for a job. Like, these things are all within the realm of OT.
I think that is not an explanation I've heard before. So I really like you out here shooting new shots, Cassie. If a child is in the school and they have been diagnosed with different levels of neurodivergent, at what point would you say a paraprofessional is necessary?
Oh man, way before the schools can provide it usually.
Yeah.
The budgets are so limited. By the time somebody's identified of needing a paraprofessional, usually they've had a really terrible year. Um, I think finding an advocate and working towards that, because like, imagine the body double. Sometimes they just need a person. They need a person who is safe, who can read their signals and go, oh, you're overwhelmed. Let's go over in this corner and come back later. I think so many kids need a paraprofessional that don't have it. And I would say that like OT in the school system is really limited by what they are allowed to work on, because it has to be academic and focused. And so it is more of the handwriting. It is more of the sitting still in class, just because that is their purpose there. So it's limiting on what else can be done in there. But I think if you think a child needs a paraprofessional, they probably need a paraprofessional. They're not likely to get one just because budget cuts are real, and that's tricky.
Yeah. What are some things? So we've talked about school-age children. We have a lot of nannies on who are caring for, toddlers. How can they start incorporating, and how important is it for them to start incorporating sensory activities into their daily lives with children to help with that level of regulation and learning?
From the time they're born. What we found, like I have really extensive intake forms because I work with really complex children and kids that have not had success at other clinics, and kids with trauma. I take in a lot of information so that I don't have to talk about it in front of the child. And some patterns that we started noticing, every kid that came to us, like 95% of the time, the description of them as a newborn was either a really easy baby or like the hardest baby in the world. One of the two things. They were either really hard to comfort, and usually they had tummy issues or sleep issues, or they never really complained about anything. They didn't really cry. You had to kind of wake them up to eat and they would just sit there. Typical development, babies are supposed to cry, but they're not supposed to cry all the time. And so when you see those two end caps, that child needs more support from an adult to be able to do the things. And usually the child who is the super easy child shifts over to being really hard during the toddler years, because they have not learned, I get upset, somebody takes care of it, I feel better, I'm calm. I get upset, somebody takes care of it, I feel better, I'm calm. They don't get to practice that because their bodies don't do that. And so coming alongside them through sensory activities, through relationship, helping to validate all of their emotions, that is vital from very young. I've worked with infants who were so overwhelmed by their world, they had to breastfeed in total darkness with no sound for months. And then we got them to be able, because the overwhelmedness would make them not be able to swallow.
Wow.
And then we worked on the sensory system, and then he's fine and he's eating everything. But like, you will notice something. If you feel like something's not quite right, then you're probably pretty accurate.
And what role, this is my last question. What role does trauma play in a child's formative years, and how do you see it show up in kind of academic environments or as they get to those ages?
Trauma is tricky because it doesn't take one traumatic incident. It doesn't take a beating or drug exposure. It can be like, for a lot of our autistic kiddos, existence is traumatic because the world is so much for them. But trauma it's a brain injury. So think about it as a traumatic brain injury because it changes the structure of the brain and it changes the pathways of the brain's connections. And it amplifies the system in the brain that says, this is dangerous, this is dangerous, this is dangerous. And fight or flight kicks in. And so then you get kids with a diagnosis of ODD when they're, punching people, but really they're in fight or flight, and their brain told them they were in danger when you said, do you want the red cup or the blue cup? And their brain was lying to them, but that's their brain, and so they fight. It is pervasive. Some kids are more resilient than others. And that's true. Like, I think about it as a peanut. Like, if I were to eat peanuts in a room of people, most people would be fine with that. Some people would be annoyed at the sound of my chewing. Some people who have an allergy would be fine if they stayed away and didn't touch or eat it. My sister-in-law could walk in the room, and because I'd eaten peanuts, she would start having difficulty breathing. So it is the same stimulus, but it affects people very, very differently based on their neurobiology, their physiology. And you can have kids that have, you think about, like, that trauma wasn't too bad, but how their body processed it, it was bad for them. And then you have some kids, you're like, how did you survive that hell? And then they actually are doing okay-ish. So it's tricky. You can't judge based on the history. But it does change the brain. It impacts motor skills. It impacts speech and language is delayed. It impacts the ability to decode information. So reading often is difficult. And then the social emotional skills, feeling safe and connecting with people, which is the foundation of all the things, can be really tricky. And I, like, from a therapy standpoint, the kids that we would work with follow a really predictable pattern of progress. And, we knew that our average from initial evaluation to discharge was around 10 months. And like, we're seeing hardest kids who had really significant confirmed trauma, it was closer to 14 or 15 months. And it would be like progression, boom, over and over and over. But the progression hopefully would go a little bit higher each time before their body said, I'm unsafe, and would kind of rebel against what was happening.
I think that this has been so insightful. Does anybody have any other questions that you would like to ask? Any things on your mind? Any things I haven't asked that you need to know? Silence of the lambs. Going once. Going twice. Oh,
No questions. Come on.
I do have one more question. How do
I
you
have a question. I'm sorry, I'm trying to type it in. I have a sleeping child, but I'm sending it into the box. Don't pass on me, but ask your question first, Erica.
Go ahead. No. Go ask your first. You're good. Oh, she put it in here. I realize this is likely a dynamic answer depending on different situations, but as a broad answer or response, what ways could you respond to a child in flight or flight states to support them best and create the best possible outcome for the present and going forward?
That is a really good question. If you have a kid who is in a meltdown, what you do is you make sure everybody's safe and you be present. That's it. You have to ride it out, because at that point the volcano has erupted and you just have to watch out and make sure everybody is safe. Some kids are reassured by you saying, I am right here. I know you are so mad. I am going to be with you. Some kids will be very upset that you are talking, but letting them know, I understand that you are feeling this way. So often, yes, Haley, same. I was married to one. It was fun. If you can see it happening and the meltdown is not quite to the explosive level, but you can see that start to happen, acknowledging the emotion. Man, you did not like that. You are so mad that I turned off the TV. Acknowledging the emotion can often diffuse a really big potential meltdown. Second is letting them know what the boundary is, because saying, I need you to be nice is not a boundary. Can anybody tell me what that means? What is the criteria for be nice?
Right.
There is nothing. So don't be big. You have to be really, really specific. You may not hurt people. You may not hit me. I will not let you hit me. I will not let you hit your brother. I will keep everybody safe. And come back to your body is having a really hard time. So it's not a character flaw. Like you are being naughty, you know better than this, you're a big boy. That's very shaming because they can't actually control it most of the time. No kid wants to act bad. If you acknowledge how they're feeling, let them know that you're not going away, that you're going to keep everybody safe. I'm going to help your body calm down. When you're ready, I can help your body calm down. If somebody is attacking you, you can stop them. Like you can put your hands out. Don't let people hit and kick you. You can put your hands out. You don't need to necessarily restrain or anything, but often we're bigger than them and you can kind of predict what's going to happen. I'm really, really good at predicting. And so I haven't gotten like bit or hit in a really long time because I can see what's happening beforehand. And you'll get better at it as you go. And then staying with them. There are some kids that have such big meltdowns, you have to protect yourself by shutting them in a room or shutting you in a room. Because for some of our kids, the bigger ones can get really, really dangerous. And that's a separate talk probably, but identify the emotion, give them a clear boundary, use as few words as you can, and then stay and help them recover. And by helping them recover, it is being present. For each kid, it's different. The most common calming things are deep pressure, but some kids, if they're in a panic and you do that, they feel like you're attacking them. So you'll have to kind of read that. And it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to try to provide deep squeezes and go, oh, you did not want me to do that. I'm so sorry. I will not do that any more times. And then later talk to them like, man, I was trying to calm your body down, but your body said, no, thank you. It's okay to try stuff, even if you're wrong, because that's how you're going to find out what's helping. And you can ask them, do you want me to squeeze your feet? Do you want a big hug? Do you want your water to drink as they're starting to come down?
I love that. Great, great, great. Any other questions? Question, Tiffany, based on your ADHD diagnosis, how important was the diagnosis to helping you deal with day-to-day life? And if you're dealing with parents who don't believe their older kid could have ADHD based on their good school performance, how would you work to convince them to get some sort of help or testing?
It is so important that I'm trying to write a book on it.
Do that.
Because parents don't want their kid to have a label.
Yeah.
Or use it as a crutch. But I will tell you, kids have labels. My label before I knew I had ADHD was fraud, failure, lazy, weird, annoying. I had those labels in my head, worthless. And like in college, I was always a straight A student in high school, and I get to college and I got C's and got kicked out of the honors program, which is like, for me, was the most absolutely devastating thing. And my mental health was dangerous, which, nobody knew because I hid it because I had to be perfect. But if I would have known, hey, you're going to college, you're going to lose the supports of your mom making you get up every day and go to school. You're going to lose the support of your mom making you breakfast every day. You're going to lose the support of somebody saying, turn off the light and go to bed, stop reading. I didn't have those. And so I didn't do those. And so I didn't go to class and I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't eating. And by my sophomore year of college, like my mental health was really, really dangerous. And then it kind of perked up a little bit because I got roommates and I had people around me. And then again in grad school, when things got harder, like you can cope until you can't, you can fake it until you can't. Things got harder. And again, like it was really, really dangerous. So if I would have known, hey, I have ADHD, I am prone to these things. If I am stuck on my bed for an hour after I get out of the shower because I can't move, it's not because I'm incompetent or a failure as a human. It's because my brain is actually literally stuck and I can't move. So I think that having the right diagnosis and then helping a child understand what that means and the potential pitfalls and how it's not a character failure, but your brain actually doesn't have the dopamine to do the simple tasks that everybody else can do. I think it's vital.
Very insightful. I do co-sign on everything that she said. I always do, but I think that we have so many parents who are diagnosis shy. But to what Kassie said, I think that that is so impactful that they're going to label, either other people are going to label them or they're going to label themselves, giving them the opportunity to get the right help at the right time at the earliest portion of their life helps them to have ownership of that process and not fall victim to the things that are happening in their body. They can overcome that. They can get coping mechanisms. They can understand it and learn more about it as they grow older and feel more competent versus feeling so helpless and feeling like their body is betraying them. So it's really important that we get ourselves out of the way as caregivers, as parents and things like that, to just give our children what they need in order to be successful. Anyone else? Any other questions? It's been so great. I feel like I should light a candle or something. Thank you so much, Kassie. You are the GOAT. As always, everybody, I will be sending out her information because she is doing consulting services. And so once she gets that to me, then I will be sending that to all of our clients so that they can know they can have her goodness in an all new way in a more one-to-one capacity. And I think that that's something that our community needs, that I know our clients need, and definitely our children need, probably some of us need. So we'll be getting that information out and feel free to share it and share it and share it. When we find people who are really, really good at what they do, these are the people we should have around our babies. All right. So thank you so much, Kassie, for all of your time tonight. I really appreciate you, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up now. We have our last 15 minutes. What'd you think? That's pretty awesome. Wasn't she so awesome? Don't you just love her too? I will share her with you because I love you so much. I will loan her to you for this season of our lives together. So she was awesome. A few things I want to hit on that some of them already hit on is this after school collapse. This after school restraint collapse. Do any of you experience this when your children are coming home from school? The teachers say they've been so perfect. You get them in the car and suddenly they become demons. They're like falling apart. They're having tantrums. They're losing their ever loving mind. And you're like, what do you mean? You were just so great at school. Why are you not so great with me? It's because it's been a lot. And so some symptoms of that would be screaming, crying, whining, disrespectful behavior, and anger. Some ways that we can help with that is to greet them with a smile and a hug. Less words, more physicality. So I'm so happy to see you. I've missed you so much. A nice deep hug. Oh, guys, there was a fly. Anybody who knows me knows I hate flies. I have been watching this fly this entire time, and I just got it. Let's just all have a moment of silence for the success that I've had in eradicating this fly. Anyways, so we greet them with a smile and hug, and then we observe first. I have ridden with so many nannies, and the first thing they do when babies get in the car is we just start running. How was your day? So what'd you think today? Blah, 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 blah. It's just so much. Just look at them first. Look to see, did they run to you happy? Were they smiling when they got in the car? Did they look tired when they got in the car? Were they frustrated when they got in the car? Some of that can help inform the way that we interact with these babies when they get in our car after school. Maybe we can say, you look so happy. You look like you've had an amazing day. Something great must have happened to you today. Would you like to talk about it? Or you look like it's been a long day. Would you like me to turn the music on? Do you want to talk or do you want to rest? We can kind of just look first and respond later. Providing a brain break. So just like what Kassie spoke to, what the other teacher spoke to, putting on some music, rolling down the windows, just letting it rest. They've been talking and interacting all day. From some of our babies who may end up being introverts, this is not their jam, right? They've been peopling all day long. They don't want to people with you. They just got in the car. They want to woosah. So turn on some music, roll down the windows, give them some food, meet their physical needs. Water should be present. Their snacks, something to snack on should be present, especially if you are a nanny for whom you're transporting children directly from school to activities. You need to meet them with the things that they need to level out their blood sugar, to get them some water. They can't be happy when they're hungry, when they're thirsty, when they're dehydrated, and when they're sleepy. And then you want to provide emotional outlets. For some children, they want an activity when they get home. For some children, they just want to snuggle and read a book. You need to read that situation well, so that you can best provide the input that is needed for the child that you have in front of you. Another thing I want to touch on is the after school convo. So we just spoke on today. Some things, if you do have a child that's chatty and they do want to talk to you a little bit later, you can focus on learning, classmates, moments, and themselves. Things we want to steer clear of are asking why questions and asking did questions. If you are trying to connect with the child, when you ask a did question, you set yourself up for a yes or no answer, especially for our babes that are in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade and on. Did you have a good day? Yes. Did you like your lunch? Yes. Did you have any hard classes? No. And then you're like, I don't know why they don't communicate with me. You should ask better questions. So we don't ask did questions. We don't ask why questions if they've encountered something. Why? Because it requires them to then know the intent of the person or the situation that happened to them. And a lot of times that's too much for them to know at that time. It's a little outside of their pay grade, right? So questions you can ask are questions that are open-ended. Is there a subject that you want to know something about? What's a question that you had today? Is there anything you'd like to talk about? Who was kind today? Who did you enjoy today? What excited you today? How are you feeling so far? These open-ended questions can help us a little bit more when they are ready to talk. Another thing you can think about is not talking when they get in the car, but sometimes talking over eating is a really good moment. They've had time to compress. They got some food in their mouth. I don't know about you, but when I'm hangry, I'm a lot more chatty once I have some food. Like I become a whole different person. I just transform and I just become a nicer, chattier person when I'm not hangry. And so our babies are similar. So maybe once they're eating, that's a good time to talk. If you are a person for whom you are there during their evening routine, talking when they're laying in the bed. Sometimes for some children, I don't know if any of you are in this way. Obviously, I'm not, but I empathize with people who are. They're really intimidated with eye contact and face-to-face conversations. And so sitting there talking to your child or looking them dead in their eyes, being like, so tell me about their day, that feels like much. And so for some children, they talk better parallel than they do face-to-face. And so talking as you're doing something, talking while they're eating, talking as you're laying on the bed and they're getting ready for bed and you're both just looking up, those can seem like lower temperature conversations. And you may find that they'll offload a little bit better in those environments. Another thing I want to just really talk on just very briefly is this thing that I studied. It was pretty amazing. So there was this science teacher who did a study. He had 40 students between the ages of 4 and 6. He did a science experiment with them that day, right? Then he sent them home and he recorded the conversations that they had with their parents. And he wanted to know how the conversations went affected how the children remembered what happened that day in class and how they performed the following day. The parents had no idea, no knowledge of the science experiment that had taken place in class. And the difference between a child retaining the information from that day in an academic form or them losing more of that information had to do with the way that the parents spoke to the child once the child was in a position to talk. So say we've debriefed, we've given this calm space, and now the child is chatty. Highly elaborative parents or nannies or caregivers, they talk more frequently about past events with children. They ask open-ended questions. They encourage them to provide details. They allow the children to take the lead. These parents help children recall instances better. And by that recall, they affirm and support what they've learned that day. And that child then remembers it better the next day. If you have a parent or caregiver that's a low elaborative parent, a low elaborative nanny, they don't discuss past events very often. They ask questions that are what or did questions that just elicit a single response. They don't request as many details. So the child was like, it's fine. And you just let it roll. You don't ask for more details. Their children tend to retain information less because they're not having to recall it. So I just encourage you that once you do have a child in front of you that's ready to talk about their day, lean more to the side of a highly elaborative caregiver or nanny or parent than the low elaborative side. And the things that we've studied, we've talked about over several years of the PISA scores of the Finnish schools and their school system, how they're doing things, and the way that it is positively affecting children. Some things that we can learn from them is the benefits of creative play, of project-based learning, of critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, playing, guided learning, and preparing children to learn versus preparing them to take tests. It's really important. Sometimes even when our nannies are and I've been guilty of this. When we're doing activities with children, we put a lot of emphasis on the way it turns out, right? They do this craft and it's like this big hoorah on the way it turned out. We learn this thing and it's a big emphasis on what the end result was versus putting a lot of stock and words and language to the process that led to the outcome. You know, the process of creating that art. And really allowing that to get center stage, to be more process driven than product driven, helps our children to find joy in learning. And to the things that our teacher spoke of earlier about children being really frustrated with frustration, it helps our children navigate that. When you're celebrating their effort, when you're celebrating the process, when you're celebrating the time it takes, that it took them 3 days to put together this puzzle, you know, that's been sitting out on the table and they've been doing it over the course of these 3 days. Yes, you can be like, look what you created. But then all through it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just love how you're just sticking with this, how you're finding these pieces, how you're taking your time, you know, how much patience you must have, how dedicated must you be. I love your focus with this, you know, because all things don't come easily. And I think when we put some emphasis in the home, these are not our teachers' jobs, y'all. Like, I'm just saying, like, we are in the home. We have much to do with how our children are doing in these classroom environments and teaching them to find joy in the process of learning versus just the act or the product that learning produces is where we want to put our time, because this is statistically what creates the best citizens, gives them the best chance in life. They need critical thinking skills and all those things. In Finnish schools, children don't take compulsory learning till 7. And so while I'm all for us helping with literacy development, I want us reading to children every day. It's not to teach them to read. It's for them to have the joy of reading, the joy that comes with recognizing your name, finding joy in recognizing that letter versus being able to just attach to my stat sheet that I taught a child all these letters. Because if they didn't find joy in it, we are all parts of the first teachers. And so if they end up hating you, the likelihood that they're gonna like, you know, Miss Bailey in first grade, it kind of goes down, right? And so if we create learning and center learning around an activity that is to be enjoyed, that is fun, that's exciting, then we set them up to look for those same traits when they go into the school. Any questions on that? So what do you think about what we've learned so far? What thing has stuck out to you? Oh, y'all are saying a lot. Sorry, I missed your chats. Sorry, I'm just now, Kelly said, honestly, I feel like I learned more than I thought. I love that. I love that. I hope that you are all retaining information. Our goal today is not attendance, just to check it off a box. It's for us to retain things. Erica, will you pass on one more question to Kassie? I just want to know if she has any favorite popular doctors, ideologies, things like that. Yes, I will absolutely do that. So for those of us, I asked the question earlier on how confident do you feel in supporting educators and supporting your children through the process of education? On a scale of 1 to 10 tonight, how would you rate yourself? How confident do you feel? Summer's out of 10. Beverly said, I love that it stretched my current knowledge more. Jeanette's out of 10. The thing I feel about this training is the importance of knowing your kids. 1000%. 1000%. I think it's important that we don't just know about children. It's important that we know about the child in front of us. And sometimes we're just learning about kids in general and we're missing the one that's in front of us. So I really love that. 10, Emma said, I loved it. I feel like I learned a lot. I'm more confident. 9.5. Yes, that's what I want. That's what I want. So my last notes as we go are Oops, sorry, guys. Boop, boop. Are meet the physical needs without hesitation. As our children come home from school, do not make them beg for snacks and hydration. You give them to them. You give it to them without question. Food is never a discipline. We never use that as a consequence. Food is necessary, period. We help children build relationships because children learn from people they like. We help facilitate adequate sleep. If your child, when you come to work in the morning, is always looking like they've been out clubbing, you may want to talk to that client about that because that child needs some adequate sleep in order to be successful in class. Model kindness, model continuous learning, model curiosity, keyword model. You have a lot to do. We have a lot to do with how a child views these things. Affirm the process, not the product. Maintain structure and boundaries. Co-regulate with them. Listen twice and talk once. Partner with these parents and teachers and other professionals. Acknowledge your weaknesses and outsource accordingly. If this is not your jam, you don't feel well-versed in helping a child get ready for preschool or whatever, then get some information and some tutoring and some advice for someone who does. Use empathy and be willing to adjust quickly and maintain that flexibility. This is all we have for tonight. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you who showed your amazing faces on this evening. As a reminder, our next training is on September 10th. Feel free to drop your name in the Slack channel for your attendance for tonight. I hope you've each, left with more information than you started with. I hope you're motivated to smile when you see your babies tomorrow and be all the wonderful things that they need you to be. And once again, thank you again for your time, your attention, and your intention. And I wish you all the best. Until next time, take care. Bye.